Wow. Okay.
Voice of God.
Yeah. Well, here they are. Speak of the devil. Hey, Chris. This is Chris and Lisa. And they'll be talking in the last half hour of the program. So welcome. We're going to get started here, and hopefully they're going to turn down my voice. This is a little intimidating. Uh-oh. How come the slides aren't advancing, Seth? Any?
You gotta bring that back over here.
Oh, okay. Awesome. All right, just so you know, this event is being recorded and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel, which has, I think we're at a single digit hits on that now. So that's something you can check out. And the PDFs of the slides will be made available. So particularly, you know, like the EPA slides, if that's something you want to refer to later. And you can get 1.5 hours of PDH credits for attending this as well. So we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the things going on with NMSA. We got Seth is going to cover some regulatory and policy updates at the national level, some of our initiatives and projects. And we're going to talk about some of the NMSA goals and objectives before we turn it over to EPA. And there'll be time for some, you know, audience Q&A there as well. So some of the things that have happened recently that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is that the stormwater testing and evaluation for products and practices has been launched. And this is something you can go to our website to check out, but basically it's a verification process. And the first thing that's available right now is for trash devices. So this is something that you can verify that a trash device that you're installing is actually taking out trash. What a concept, huh? And it's being expanded rapidly. We're going to have hydrodynamic separators coming online this year and filters probably early next year. So stay tuned. This is, again, a national verification program for BMPs. And we're going to be expanding after that into non-proprietary type BMPs as well. We are excited to announce, and EPA, I think we'll be talking about this a little bit more, the Centers for Excellence in Stormwater Infrastructure was funded through Congress this year. So there are 4 centers that are around the country. One is right here also in Nevada. They were successful, the Desert Research Institute and the University within Nevada consortium put together. But NMSA is part of a team, which is the University of New Hampshire and the University of Minnesota on one of the centers as well. So this is a excellent program. It's going to be kind of a, I think, a unifying, not only for information, but also for just stormwater leadership nationally. And much more to come on that. I think notice to proceed. One of our PIs is right here, Jamie Hool. You were saying is December 16th. So that's going to be starting this year. And we've rolled out a new NMSA website, so please check that out. You can now join and pay your dues online. All our information is up there as well. Completely refreshed. Seth has put a ton of work into that. So run up the numbers on that in terms of visits so that Seth feels like he has been vindicated in all that work that's going on. Couple of things that we'll be talking about a little bit more as I go on. National Stormwater Policy Forum, National Stormwater Days. We're gaining partners. I'll show you a screen on what we've got going on there. And talk more about that stuff a little bit later. So here's what NMSA is currently, a 501c3 for promoting stormwater within the U.S. and helping MS4s to implement their stormwater programs. Right now we have 26 state groups. That's how we were initially conceived, as an organization of organizations to take this federal system of 50 states implementing a stormwater program and have one voice back up to the federal government, which administers it on a broad level. So right now we represent 4,400 of the total 7,500 roughly MS4 permittees within the US, and over half the urban population, as you can see there. We also have 3 MS4 members. We're starting to expand out now, where individual MS4s can join the organization. We have 3, hopefully getting more. And we also have affiliate members. These are private companies and organizations, things like that. That's 2 different kind of entities: NMSA affiliates and STEP affiliates. Affiliates that are supporting the stormwater testing and evaluation of products and practices. I'll show you that in just a minute. And emeritus members. So you don't ever go out to pasture or die when you retire from stormwater. You become a NMSA emeritus members. One of those people that isn't out in the pasture that I see is Dave Smith back there. He's one of our emeritus members. We have others, and I'll show you those in just a minute as well. For that, you can join NMSA. Here's the various membership levels. Individuals, those are for MS4s. You can see the fees are very reasonable. We have non-traditional as well. So if you're like institutional, university or DOT, something like that. And then you can see what the affiliate and state and emeritus members there. But it's very easy now. You used to have to call Seth and beg him to send you like an invoice and put you on. And now it's all just done online. So no more begging, no more groveling. You can use this QR code to get there. And here's just some of the benefits and things that you get for NMSA membership. So anyway, enough of that commercial. We'll move on. Here's our leadership right now. You can see is going to sit. I'm the chair, our vice chair. Jamie Hool is right here. We have, you can see the rest of the executive directors and board members, and Seth Brown as our executive director. This is a list of our affiliate members that we have. I think we have 2 screens of them. And then the STEP members. These are the people that are supporting the stormwater testing initiative, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. This is something that we're going to be rolling out. The board talked about this morning, an affinity program for partners. So if you're interested in something like this, to become an enterprise partner with NMSA to assist, MS4s in their mission to implementing their stormwater programs, and you're in a position to be able to provide value in that way to help with that. That's something, please talk to Seth about that. We're also looking for partnering in terms of webinars and things like that, sponsorships. So those are available as well. Here's, I talked a little bit about our emeritus members. This is the list of people, and it's really kind of people that have put in a lot of service to stormwater and kind of are experts in their field. So we're always looking to add emeritus members. It's something that application is submitted and then the board votes on. So it's there's a little bit of thought behind who we add. So here's a list of our members, and then we have 2 centers of excellence within NMSA, and these are I think activity-based centers. So I mean, they're actively putting out products and exploring things that, again, assist in our mission, which is helping MS4s implement their programs. We have a community-based public-private partnership center for excellence, and Dominique Lukenkoff is the head of that. She is a ex-region administrator for the US EPA, and she just finished, along with Seth, it was a report on CBP type activities, right? And that's available to everybody on our website currently. So that's something that you can check out. And then we also have our Center of Excellence for the stormwater testing, and that's Jay Holtz, who leads that in rolling out the STEP program. So just going to talk a little bit about, I had mentioned these Centers for Excellence in Stormwater. This was part of actual legislation that was passed and then funded. And we actually got, it was a huge hurdle because I think these were initially started talking about these, well, probably back in 2010. It was floated in 2014, and now we actually have it done. So there's 5 million actual cash bucks available that are going to these 4 centers that are located around the country. And NMSA is on the team with the University of New Hampshire, which is co-teamed with the University of Minnesota. We also have then the University of Oklahoma. I think the university system in general teamed with some universities in California for the Nevada Award. And then I think most people are familiar with the Center for Watershed Protection, which is located back east. And they're also going to be the one putting together the kind of the collaborative database for this. So an exceptionally interesting and exciting program. Do we have a slide here that shows the scope of that next, or? Yes, we do. Let me move to that. Yes, should have known this. So here's the focus areas. This is what is going to be happening, what these universities are going to be looking at. Some active research is going to be conducted in the stormwater field, technical assistance as well to state and tribal governments, so helping you implement your MS4 program, and then just collaborating and I think providing some leadership in the stormwater arena at a national level. So hasn't been done before. I think it's a really exciting concept, and I think a lot of good things are coming out of it because we've got some really good people that are going to be under contract for this. So more to come on that. And again, it's starting this year in December, and I think you'll really see next year where you're going to start seeing things, positive things come out of this program. I mentioned that our website is revamped, and this is a really, really difficult slide to look at, but it shows that we have a new URL, a new membership portal, and you can set up your own account and put stuff in there about you and your organization, and it's going to help with the future information exchange and collaboration that we have coming. But most of all, it's really easy to pay your fees, and then when it comes time to renew your membership again, the computer will pester you about that. So I urge you to check it out and join NMSA if you haven't already. All right, we're going to move into, the national regulatory policy update and things. Seth is going to cover this, and then also some of our initiatives and projects before we turn it over to US EPA. So Seth, are you ready and available? All right.
All right, thanks everybody for showing up today here online. We've got like 50 plus people online and 30 people, 50 people in the room. So it's a pretty good crowd. Thanks for being here. I am not Steve Dye. As you can see, he dresses much better than I do. But he's the Senior Director of Government Affairs at the Water Environment Federation. We work closely with Steve and the Water Environment Federation to track federal policies, federal legislation, and some regulations too. So he shared some information that I wanted to share with you. He couldn't make it here for this. So I did want to mention that part of our function as an organization is to, I'm in the DC area. Steve Dye is in the DC area. We want to, we work at the national level to track federal legislation to make sure that, and regulatory issues on behalf of the MS4 sector. So everything that we're talking about should be tying into that kind of context. Going back to the 2021 Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, or the bipartisan infrastructure law, however it's referred to, there's a lot of great stuff in here. Historic level of investment for water infrastructure writ large, but also more than there's ever been for stormwater that was authorized. So I want to clarify that's been authorized. There's a difference between authorized and then appropriated, right? Authorized means this is what we would like to do. Appropriated means this is what we're going to pay the bills to actually do and invest in. So this is all the stuff that's in there. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but the point is that there was a lot in there. I've got the centers of excellence that Scott talked about listed, highlighted there. Here's a couple slides I got from Steve, and the areas that are in the green boxes are the areas that are really should focus on Again, there was authorization, if you look on the right side, authorization for $5 million for the Stormwater Centers of Excellence. That's been fully appropriated. So that's the Centers of Excellence you guys have heard about. They maxed that out with appropriations, which is historic and which is great. And I think it's going to be the start of a big thing. It's a big milestone, I think, for the stormwater sector. But an example of a program that was not appropriated at a high level is the Sewer Overflow Grants Program, or otherwise known as OSG. This is the only major grants program specifically dedicated to stormwater, appropriated or authorized at 280 million, and it's only authorized for 48 million right now. So this is an example of a topic or a program that, as an organization, we advocate for more, an increase in the level of investment, because we really need to have grants at a higher level in our sector. The construction grants program back in the 70s and 80s really drove investment in the wastewater sector. We never had that. The OSG program is an example of a program that can be that for us, but we need to be at the table, literally at the table with congressional staff and others to be asking for that, to ask our Congress members. And that's, we do a national stormwater policy event every year. These are the type of things that we focus on. Still on the right-hand side, says still needs additional funding. Again, resilience and sustainability grants, stormwater planning, implementation grants, all these things were packed into that IIJA legislation that have not been appropriated as of yet. So the point is that these are missed opportunities to actually get things done, but at least we're starting to have the conversation in a way that we've never had before, frankly. This is another slide that was provided by Steve, and the one that, again, the one in the middle, and I bring that up because some of this is more wastewater oriented information. And if you want to scan that QR code, you can go to the WEF Water Advocates page to learn more about other things that WEF's doing, which is great work. But in the green box there, that's why I highlighted that, because PFAS is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in all sectors, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And this is legislation that's looking for liability protection, because now that PFAS is considered toxic, this is now a CERCLA or a Superfund type of dynamic. This is beyond the NPDES program. So why that's impactful is that there can be third-party lawsuits, and that municipalities, public works, others can be brought into these third-party lawsuits, and they can be massive. And what we're looking for is protection. EPA cannot give us that protection. They just can't, even if they wanted to, and they think they do. There's EPA in the room, so I'm being kind here, but I think the EPA wants to, but it's not up to them. So there has to be congressional action. So this is another example why we need to be engaged at the federal level to make sure that we're doing what we can we're not trying to push back and say that we shouldn't be treating PFAS, but being dragged into a third-party lawsuit is not something that's going to be helpful to us. And it's an example of things that will happen if we're not engaged at the national level. So we're looking for what's called passive receiver protection. So that's something just to put on your radar as things that, and there's a lot more that we could talk about on the legislative side. Those are just some of the highlights. We only have time for so much at this point. And I do see that we have EPA in the room, so we're all good to go on that. So good to see you guys. They just flew in here just for this meeting. It's really a special time. I appreciate that. So I do want to talk about some things that we cover at the national level in terms of policy, what our priorities are, and how we engage folks. We track what's going on on the legal side too. There's a little bit to talk about here. There's a lot more that we can cover, and we will cover tomorrow at our National Legal and Stormwater Policy Center session. Tomorrow from 1 to 1:45 at the Crystal Ballroom, I guess, which is the main ballroom over there. But anyway, the Supreme Court rulings are becoming more impactful to our world than they have in the last, 10, 20 years, something like that. Of course, the waters of the U.S. has been going back and forth. A lot of that's been driven by stormwater rulings. What we've been asking for are exclusions for stormwater infrastructure to not ever be considered at waters of the U.S. because it was intended to be a treatment. Right? We did not get that. That's been in parts of previous versions of the waters of the U.S., but we were not successful. We're going to continue to try to address that. But that's an example on the Supreme Court ruling for waters of the U.S. that impacts our world. The county of Maui in Hawaii has had a Supreme Court ruling talking about groundwater discharges and how they can be considered a discharge to waters of the U.S. as well. A lot to be considered there. We don't have time to go into it, but this is the kind of thing that does impact our world, and we can provide, and we do provide more information to our members. And I think the last thing that I wanted to mention, the Supreme Court is, well, the next to last thing that has already been, that's already happened is the Chevron doctrine ruling. I don't know how many folks, I'm just kind of curious in the room, how many people have heard about the Chevron doctrine? I know you guys have. Okay, so this is new to some folks. Basically, this is a longstanding precedent. We're going into great detail. Longstanding precedent since the 80s to give deference to regulatory authorities to basically do what they need to do to make regulations and rulemaking. That has been overturned. So now the thought is that questions or pushback on regulatory questions or legislative issues that end up in regulations are going to be decided in the courts. And that could be challenging because we have 800 federal courts that they could decide in different ways. It's going to change things in a significant way. We don't know how, and this just happened. But that's another example of why we need to be at the table and trying to be on top of things rather than just being reactive to what's going on. Speaking of being on top of things and trying to be ahead of things, the next session of the Supreme Court is going to have a really important case called the City and County of San Francisco versus EPA. Basically, the question is, are narrative limits permissible in permits, in NPDES permits? And if not, or if not, that'll have impacts on the MS4s potentially, and the maximum extent practicable. This is going to be October 16th. I think that's the date. I think, is that correct? Yeah. So October 16th is when this hearing is going to take place. We're going to be on top of it. So that's that's an example of things that we're trying to stay on top of. Again, you'll learn more about all these things at the session tomorrow on legal and policy. There are other policies that we are following. It starts with funding and ends with funding. We just need more and more funding, obviously, in the sector. Every infrastructure sector says this. But we really mean it. We really mean it because we have a lot of challenges this way. So we're staying on top of that. We've engaged with EPA on this topic to try to find ways to get more funding from the federal level, but other also technical assistance on how to generate more funding. And I know our emeritus member Dave Smith here has been helping us with that, which we greatly appreciate. And that ties in with technical assistance for communities, not only to technical assistance to build things, but also to get funding for projects that are needed and for planning and whatnot too. I mentioned PFAS. That's something, again, we have to stay on top of, and we are part of what's called the Passive Receiver Coalition with many other organizations at the national level. But there are other emerging contaminants, right? We've got issues related to the microplastics, 6-PPDQ, and others that keep on popping up. We need to stay ahead of those, and those are things that we definitely we track closely. Electronic reporting rule, I think you guys are going to talk about that, right? So I won't go into much detail, but this is something, again, that's coming up at the end of 2025, I believe. It's when it becomes relevant, and I won't steal your thunder, but EPA is going to talk about it much more than I will. And even water quality trading, I think we're looking at a rulemaking potentially happening this fall or winter, and that could have some impacts on stormwater as well. We have to see what it looks like and how wide it goes. I also wanted to mention the Clean Watershed Needs Survey. This is something that we spent a lot of time focused on trying to get better coverage, frankly, on this. This is something that's, I think it's supposed to be done every 2 to 4 years. And back in the day, they were supposed to do this, but I think it's become less frequent, unfortunately. But I think hopefully it's going to become more frequent than it had been. But it's been a 10-year gap from 2012 to 2022 between this. But this is a survey of all the states and by EPA asking, do a 20-year lookout. What are your needs over the next 20 years in these different areas? It could be CSOs, it could be, I don't know, wet weather, peak flow management. And there's a specific area for stormwater. And that was really underreported in the past. So we and others worked really hard to get the word out to try to make sure that localities worked with their states to provide better information on reporting. And I think it's been really effective. We can see that it's been a 365% increase over the last 10 years. So from the last survey to this survey, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of reported needs in stormwater. It's really helpful. is really helpful because a lot of funding from the federal government is indexed by this type of information. And it also provides us with the ability to go and say, look, we do have significant needs. It highlights that. And I think even the effort of going to find this information at the local level and at the state level provides more awareness overall. So I think there's many reasons it's great. It's really helpful. And EPA was wonderful to work with on that. And hopefully that continues. As far as our priorities are concerned, again, I already talked about this. We've got an ongoing dialogue with EPA about funding and technical assistance. We're going to continue that, maybe even looking at like a long-term plan. How can we set up a dialogue that really generates more meaningful investment? The SRF program is just not a great way for us to get funding in our sector. We're looking for other opportunities, and that's really part of this too. PFAS monitoring program. I know that Washington State, I think, is the first state where they've got in their industrial permit, they've got monitoring requirement for PFAS. I think that's the first of its kind in the country. That's the kind of thing we want to track, and again, let others know this is something to be aware of at least. We provided a letter to EPA Administrator Reagan about various needs that we see that are not being addressed by the agency in stormwater, and we got a great response back. And we worked along with American Rivers and NACWA, which is a national organization that's focused on clean water sector. And that's the kind of engagement that we're focused on to try to highlight the needs in our sector. Again, there's other things we talked about, PFAS and water quality trading. I already talked about that, so I'm not going to go to that. As I mentioned, we do a national policy forum every year. This usually around April, which is called the fly-in season, when folks across the country fly in and visit their congressional members. And you can see, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, those items that are in italics are the topics that we asked for. So when someone goes to their congressional member, they need to ask for certain specific things. We developed the ask document that you leave behind, and the more that we can get engagement in this area, the more that we can get legislative successes. And we've been really good in getting the success so far, and we hope to do more of that. I've talked about this already, so I'm not going to go into greater detail. I think other than we are going to be looking for expanded investment in the EPA Stormwater Centers of Excellence. I want to talk a little bit about initiatives and projects that we're focused on specifically. For those who are not familiar with NMSA, these are our action areas. Of course, we're a 501c3 dedicated to the MS4 sector. We're the only national organization solely focused on MS4s. So that in mind, of course, our top priority is to provide sector support and information, as well as education. We also know that messaging and communication is important. We are communication and messaging about stormwater at the local level is important. It's part of our permits, right? Part of our programs. But I think even nationally, raising awareness for stormwater is something there's a huge need for that, and we're trying to address that. Stormwater is a resource. Stormwater is a great investment. And again, I've talked a lot about the policy and advocacy work that we're doing. So these are areas that we're focused on. Scott has talked about this already. Here's just a little bit more information about the stormwater testing and evaluation for products and practices program. Basically, the bottom line is, as Scott talked about, this is a program to set up a national testing program to verify how well our infrastructure works. So you can think about STEP as kind of the consumer reports for stormwater. That's kind of the elevator pitch. And we're doing this because we're not trying to lower the bar. We're trying to raise the bar. We want to make sure that, if there's going to be billions of dollars, and there are billions of dollars of public dollars spent on stormwater, that it works, that we have confidence that it works in a way that we can go to the public and say, this is worth you putting money into. This is meaningful. This is going to help us address water quality issues. And again, Scott already talked about this, so I won't go into as much detail, but we have launched. This is a huge deal. We've got a new website. Go to stormwatertesting.org. You can learn all the information about what's going on with STEP there. We've got a full roster of our external reviewers, highly qualified professionals that help us do third-party reviews that are objective. So that's a big takeaway here, is that these are verifications not done by us. Product manufacturers are not paying for verifications that are done by us. They're done by, when I say us, the staff people. The folks that are really doing the work are the external reviewers, and these are folks that are not paid for the review outcome. They're paid for the review itself. that's the objectivity that really provides a lot of credibility to the program. We're starting to get states and jurisdictions are starting to join us. If you're interested, please let us know. We have information on that. And we actually have our first applications that are coming through now, and that we're getting a couple more in the very near future. So this is an active program. It has not been for a long time. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it has not been. So I just want to clarify that. This step is based upon the ASTM program or organization and ASTM standards. We worked with others to establish the first stormwater focused committee. So it's Committee E64, the Committee on Stormwater Control Measures. You can get in, I would love to get folks involved. It's only like $100 a year. You don't have to write standards, I promise you. I know that's not the most exciting thing to do. I get it. But getting more eyes on this, especially from those outside the industry, provides the credibility we need to on these standards. But the bottom line is that we have finalized a trash capture standard. We're working, as Scott talked about, hydrodynamic separators on the lab testing environment, and filter systems are done or going to be done in the very near future. Once those are done, we will be full on for lab testing, as much as any other lab testing verification program across the country can do. And we're moving forward with field testing, and I think it's going to be less than 12 to 18 months. I think it'd be more like 6 to 12 months that we'll get that set up so that we can really, and we're focusing on the TAPE program and using the TAPE protocols. That's technology assessment protocol for ecology, and replicating that, but bring it to the national level. A lot of states and jurisdictions rely on that program, but they don't pay for it. We're trying to change that so that we're all in on it. There's a lot more to come. I'm not going to go through this whole list, but we know that long-term performance is an issue for stormwater infrastructure, public domain practices like Scott talked about. How does performance vary in different types of climates and contexts, precipitation regimes? We're looking at making STEP international. Anyway, if you want to learn more about this, tomorrow morning, 10:15 to 11, and Crystal 3-4, we'll be going through more details on ASTM and STEP, what's behind it, what's to come. So that's more information there. One thing we started doing last year is National Stormwater Day. This celebrates the start of the MS4 program, which is November 16th, 1990. We set up a website, stormwater.day. If you go there, you can get all sorts of information. This really came out of a lot of stormwater awareness efforts across the country that you see at the state and local level. We said, why don't we bring them all together and celebrate stormwater? And it happens to also be National Button Day. There's a national day for everything, you'll find out. So we were not going to get support from the Zippers or the Velcro Coalition, but we will get support from the National Button Coalition, I'm sure. But anyway, this year, because November 16th is on a Saturday, we're not that crazy. We're gonna be celebrating it on November 15th, which is a Friday, and we're gonna be talking about the ASCE report card, things like that, and the stormwater, and just kind of celebrating our the achievements in our sector. Also, we'll be recognizing the life of John White-Scarver. For those who know him, he was really one of the folks at EPA who wrote all the NPDES and MS4 rules back in the day. So he passed recently, so we're gonna recognize him. I mentioned the ASCE report card. The big takeaway here, for those who don't know, for the first time ever, 2021, stormwater was included as part of as a separate infrastructure sector, and we were given a grade of D, which is awesome. And we've confirmed with the ASCE that they're going to do this again in 2025, which is really helpful. I talked about the National Policy Forum. This is what it looks like. Again, we've talked about this a little bit, but we would love to have folks get involved. We do the same thing that we do online, make it free to folks, but we need to have more people actually come to DC, get involved, and help us carry the message to congressional members in this way. We do other webinars and trainings like this. You can see the list of things that we've been talking about, and almost all those are free. They're available on our YouTube channel as well. And we've got a learning management system that we've got in place, but we're still developing a lot of it. So we hopefully open for business soon for technical trainings as well. We work with a lot of other national organizations, the Water Environment Federation, National League of Cities, National Association of Counties, American Rivers. We're talking about working with them, which is a great NGO, about providing more national leadership in stormwater. This is something that we're just starting talking about. So there's no details to share, but it's an exciting thing. There's a lot of leadership needed at the national level. And even groups like the American Flood Coalition, this is a relatively new group focused on municipal leaders who are being impacted by flooding. Obviously, MS4 is a water quality program. This would be focused on the water quantity side, but there's a lot of synergies there. So these are, again, another reason to have a national group so we can engage with others at the national level on various topics. So with that, I think I was going to pass it over to Scott, and then we'll have EPA if you guys are good to go soon. Yeah, okay.
All right, thanks a lot, Seth. Might I say that was probably the fastest per slide speaking I've ever seen you do.
I know, I didn't well.
Yeah, you're to be congratulated. That's good. All right, I just want to talk a little bit about some of NMSA's near-term goals and objectives. These are things that, you know, we've been looking out to our membership saying, what can we do to support you? What can we do to help you? And this is the feedback that we're getting. And so it's the road we're going to be heading down. Obviously, funding and financing for MS4s is something that we've put a lot of effort into. Randy Neprash, one of our members, has looked into the state revolving funds and all of the different ways that the federal government disperses money. And we found that most of that goes to wastewater, and it's not getting to the stormwater communities for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of reasons why, but we're trying to look into those and solve those. So it's something that we are not going to let go of, and we're going to continue to work and support for. One of the reasons that we are trying to raise the profile of stormwater through the MS4 survey, through the ASC infrastructure report card, is to get the public behind stormwater. If there's not a perceived return on investment for spending money on stormwater, we're not going to get government money going into our sector. So there's a method to this madness, and it's to try to elevate the public interest and importance of what we're doing. So the public outreach, education, information is extremely important, and that's where a lot of NMSA's efforts are going to be going. Another one is source control. I think you're hearing a lot recently about emerging contaminants, and you know, it's a little bit of a misnomer because contaminants don't emerge. They've been there all the time. It's just that we don't look for them. We don't know that they're there. Stormwater is a pathway for most chemicals, it seems like, that we use in urban areas. And thinking that we're going to strain them all out at the end of the pipe at parts per billion and parts per trillion, when you start looking at the engineering of that, is really kind of a fool's errand. So we need to start focusing a lot more energy on source control, you know, controlling these at the source. I mean, what's the BMP for PFAS? What's the BMP for salt? You know, it's not putting in a reverse osmosis plant at the end of your stormwater pipe. It's going to be source control. Now, it's a long road to go down. You get a lot of pushback from chemical manufacturers, even end users, but it is the right path to go down. So it's something that, again, we are investing in. And then the next one that we're going to be focusing on is resilience. You know, it's kind of a sexy word, buzzword out there that everybody's looking at now, but what we're finding is that a lot of the infrastructure for stormwater is very old. It was built 60, 70 years ago, and it's coming time now to replace it and to repair it. And do we put back the same stuff that we did built 60 or 70 years ago, maybe a little bit bigger? Probably not. We probably want to be a little bit smarter in that. So work towards making, from both a drainage and flood management's perspective, more resilient infrastructure that also improves water quality. So we're looking at merging those two things, spending, again, the money to make a better system than the one that we definitely need to replace right now. And, you know, that's coupled in with climate change. I mean, we can argue about what's causing it, but it is happening. We're seeing it. NOAA Atlas 14 is being revised, big changes in that. So there's changes in hydrology, even in how we're doing that on an engineering level. So coalescing that all into improving stormwater quality, improving flood management outcomes, and water quality is that nexus that we're working for here. And hoping to make some really meaningful contributions to in the next several years. So that's it. I mean, that's the shortest version of NMSA that we've done in a while. So I feel pretty proud. So at this point, I'd like to have Chris Kloss, I guess, and Lisa Biddle, both. Are you both coming up? All right, awesome. And they're going to walk us through some of their updates and priorities, and hopefully they will indulge us with some time for Q&A. So
Yeah,
Lisa?
thank
Yeah,
you.
go ahead.
Just to clarify too, we're going to be going, we have until 2:15. Not that we have to take a, is that right? It feels too long. Is that right? Yeah. Right. An hour? Yeah, you want an hour. So we're going to see a lot of tap dancing going on up here, I think. So the point is we do have time. So please feel free to ask questions both to us or to EPA. I'm saying that on your behalf. I don't know if I should say that or not, but the other thing is I wanted to mention that you'll be part of the St. Anthony Falls Stormwater Seminar Series, right, in the near future. It's free online from the University of Minnesota. I think it's September 10th from at 9:30 in the morning Central Time. So something else to look at. You'll be given a longer presentation there, right? So, and I'll be part of that too, and I'm going to ruin it, I'm sure. So anyway, so go for it. I'll get out.
All right. Well, thank you, Seth. And yeah, thanks for having us. So I'm Lisa Biddle. I'm the Municipal Branch Chief in our Water Permits Division. Chris is our Division Director. And so my branch focuses on wet weather permitting issues, obviously stormwater permitting, MS4s, plus construction and industrial stormwater. We also work on the CSO program and other wet weather treatment plant issues. And we have 2 voluntary programs, the Green Infrastructure Program and the Integrated Planning Program, which I'll touch on both of those a bit today. Okay. All right, so you didn't steal my thunder, but I'm gonna not spend a ton of time on stuff that Seth already covered very well. I don't think I have any corrections to make, so that's good. Yeah, so the needs survey, yeah, we're really excited. The needs survey came out this summer. You know, I think the total needs estimate, wrote it down here, $630 billion. And about 18% of that is stormwater needs. There was a ton of work done, a lot done by NMSA and by states and by teams at EPA and other NGO groups trying to get more data in there, especially on the stormwater front. And it was immensely successful. We still think the numbers are underrepresenting the actual need though. And you know, these needs also are capturing just the capital cost needs, and it's not touching on like all the O&M needs that we were just talking about that stormwater systems have as well. But certainly helpful data. And the pie chart here just sort of shows the blue is the portion that's the stormwater need. It also captures wastewater treatment infrastructure, non-point source pollution control needs, and decentralized wastewater treatment. The electronic reporting rule that Seth mentioned. So we're in phase 2 of the e-reporting rule. And phase 2 is set to have electronic reporting like begin, although some of it's already started rolling out, but to be in full force by December 21st of next year. So it's coming. The MS4 program will be captured there. So that'll be both phase 1 and phase 2 MS4 program reporting, including some like the annual reporting content. It'll also be capturing state general permits for construction and industrial stormwater. And the states are sort of at various points within the process. So I did include a link, and I know you're going to get these slides, to a dashboard that our enforcement group, which is the one that is actually leading this effort for electronic reporting, that they host, and they update it sort of with the progress across the states as folks are rolling out the electronic reporting. So we are working on a market-based rulemaking. So this is about water quality trading. It's pretty minor reg updates, pretty discrete changes, but just to emphasize the fact that there is flexibility to use market-based approaches in NPDES permitting. And there will be a nod in that towards stormwater management programs and the ability to both do water quality trading. And also we've tried to work in an acknowledgement of just like post-construction off-site stormwater management that would be done as part of the post-construction programs in MS4s, which isn't always trading between MS4s, but we did want to acknowledge it in there. So that will go out for public comment in this fall or winter, and certainly like your attention to the language around that and how that jives with how you're running your programs would be really helpful. As Seth mentioned, we are looking at the Supreme Court is going to hear the case San Francisco versus EPA. The city's appealed their wastewater permit to the Supreme Court, and they're specifically challenging the generic narrative water quality-based effluent limit. And the court's going to hear oral arguments on that, like Seth said, on October 16th. So just yesterday, EPA's brief was due. So how it works is San Francisco submits a reply brief, and then San Francisco submits a final reply brief, and then the oral arguments happen. So ours should be live on the Supreme Court's website probably today. And then their brief will come in on the 25th, and then obviously oral arguments will happen in the fall, and then a decision. The timing on that is not 100% clear, but sometimes within some point within the next several months after that. Seth did a great, or maybe it was Scott, did a great job describing the Centers of Excellence. We're really excited about this grant program. Just in July, we announced the recipients of the grants. They're shown here, and they were listed earlier. So it's $5 million. It sets up 4 regional Centers of Excellence that have several partners. We've just listed the main grant recipients there, but they all have several partners involved. And they'll be, a resource for, promoting training and education on stormwater, like doing research on new technologies, identifying best practices, doing outreach about funding. And then the 5th grant went to the Center for Watershed Protection also, and that was for them specifically to set up this clearinghouse to house information from the Centers of Excellence and just technology information on emerging stormwater technologies. So yeah, we're really excited for things to get launched. Grantees are sort of working on some of the paperwork stuff right now, and then starting in December, they'll initiate the work, and we're really excited for what's going to come out of that. Here, I wanted to make sure we highlighted some new resources, new web pages, stuff like that I wanted to make sure were on your radar. The first one is, we've talked a lot about source control and pollutants of concern, and so we have stood up a web page that is sort of like a hub to just on stormwater pollutants in particular that folks have been doing research on within the agency or resources that we know about outside the agency. So you can, on this web page, you can launch out to different EPA pages on the PFAS roadmap that we have, PAHs, 6-PPD quinone. EPA has been doing a ton of work on that, microplastics, and if there's several other things as well. And we'll continue to update that, and all those subpages are also seem to be regularly updated. Also, the EPA recently put together a new web area on salts. It has resources from state agencies on best practices to reduce volumes used in winter maintenance. It also has a clearinghouse of chloride resources that EPA worked with NUEPIC to develop, and it links out to it because it's hosted on NUEPIC's website. And then we recently updated our green infrastructure webpage on groundwater protection in particular. We're also working on a big green infrastructure webpage update that'll roll out over the next month. But we got ahead of that with this groundwater update because we were hearing a lot from the groundwater stakeholder groups about you're encouraging so much infiltration, you're not really acknowledging where there could be groundwater resources that need protection. So, as we've been updating any of our BMP fact sheets and that sort of stuff, we're trying to be really careful to acknowledge those considerations. And so we did stand up a web page that speaks to those issues and provides a whole lot of literature resources at the bottom of it, which I think are helpful if you're looking for specific research related to a particular issue of concern. Our sister office, OWOW, recently put out a bioretention design handbook. They published it in November, and it provides the latest literature, information, as well as some interviews with municipalities, and a really great set of photos of municipal installations of bioretention, kind of showcasing the diversity of design techniques that are used across the country. So check that out. And then I wanted to mention that coming soon, we have a large suite of stormwater BMP fact sheets, but I think we've talked with you all about the fact that it was pretty silent on manufactured treatment devices. So we've been working on creating one, actually two, I think, that we'll be posting this fall. And I know you all helped us connect with some folks in that industry to make sure we kind of captured the right information. And so they provided really helpful input. So that's moving along and will come out probably in the next month or two. Okay, last year at this meeting, I talked to you a lot about our Stormwater Smart outreach tools. There's about 40 products. There's brochures, infographics, social media content, business tip sheets, case studies, how-to manuals. And the idea here was that all MS4 programs have to do outreach and education as part of their programs. And one of the things we've heard from a lot of stakeholders is that, including NMSA, that it would be really great to find some efficiencies in that and not make everybody have to reinvent the wheel program by program. So where can we provide some documents and some resources that folks can use? So they're customizable, so they can be downloaded and edited and used with your program, put your own logos on it, that sort of thing. And what I'm excited to share is that now we have Spanish language versions of all of them. So those are all linked on our website. And we're really looking for feedback on these resources. We expected that we probably didn't hit the mark on everything. We did our best, but we would really love to hear what's working, what folks are using a lot, what's missing, what do you wish was in this suite of resources. I think we'd love to, create more things and fill gaps or adjust what's there if there's some obvious tweaks that we need to make. So we'd love to hear feedback from this group on that. And we'll also talk about that tomorrow during our listening session. So hopefully we'll get time either today or tomorrow to talk about your input there. We recently rolled out some resources on long-term stormwater planning. So this is part of our suite of integrated planning resources. In 2012, EPA put out the integrated planning framework, which is about getting municipalities to plan more holistically across their infrastructure investments, thinking about where it makes sense, thinking about wastewater and stormwater, overflows, sewer system, collection system, infrastructure, all of that more holistically, and to make a plan that helps you get at your water quality goals faster by sequencing projects across programs rather than in their individual silos. As we've been, talking to communities about integrated planning, we think and we see it happening in those municipalities that are doing it, that there is a shift by doing that kind of holistic planning. They're noticing that there's been less investment in stormwater infrastructure. So it provides this great opportunity for stormwater asset funding and priorities to kind of raise up and become part of a city's long-term plan. But we also noticed that there was less out there on the stormwater side of asset management planning and some of these other main long-term planning resources that folks were doing on the wastewater side. And also, we've talked to some MS4 permittees that just don't feel like they can get their arms around the wastewater program because of jurisdictional lines and so on, that they still wanted to use the long-term planning concept of integrated planning, but really didn't have a wastewater utility to partner with per se. So we developed a guide focused on long-term planning for stormwater, and it's now live on our website. So it goes through the integrated planning steps, assessing where you are, analyzing opportunities, and moving toward implementation. And we've set it up in what we hope is an easy to navigate format. you can sort of click through the different steps in the process. It also, I think, makes it a little bit easier if you want to use some of the resources in here, but aren't necessarily on a path to write a full long-term stormwater plan, to like kind of jump in and get the worksheets, use a section of this planning resource, maybe as part of your capital improvement planning in your community. We tested the guide with 4 community pilots over several years. And we found that the communities we were working with had some similar topics that were rising up as big priorities in their long-term stormwater planning. So some of those themes are highlighted here. Asset management, I think we saw the gamut where they just needed an asset management plan to some cities that didn't have maps of where all their stormwater assets were. And so we're sort of starting from that stage. And out of that, we've seen some real value in thinking about asset management from the stormwater perspective and how there, in addition to your pipes and stormwater inlets, there's also a lot of green infrastructure being put in across communities. And there's a need to be able to track all of those assets and also track sort of the water quality benefit you're hoping to get from them and the maintenance needs that go along with maintaining that water quality benefit so you can keep getting credit for it. So sort of there's some resources in the guide about asset management from a stormwater perspective. They all had interest in stormwater infrastructure opportunities. So looking across the community to look at mapping data about topography and land use and kind of narrowing in on where the best bang for your buck is to make that investment in putting green infrastructure in the community. Big importance of stakeholder involvement, that the success of the long-term plan requires community buy-in and community participation. So as you're doing alternatives analysis of what projects should be sequenced when and that sort of thing, making sure you have your community members, your key stakeholder groups in the community at the table for those conversations. Financing and funding came up across the board, as we've talked about a lot. And then also the importance of development and redevelopment policies as opportunities to influence how, when there's property turnover or changes happening within the community, to better capture stormwater on those sites so that you can reduce the burden on the MS4 in some cases. So here I've got an overview of all the products that are involved. This is the guide I mentioned. There's 10 editable worksheets that can be downloaded and kind of do what you want with them. They're Word documents mostly. A site suitability analysis document, which we'll be adding soon, and it goes through that green infrastructure opportunities analysis that I talked about. For now, we do have 3 examples from 3 of the communities up on our website that sort of show how they went through that analysis and what their sort of stormwater opportunity heat maps looked like. And then 3 example long-term plans, as well as some documents that we developed with Santa Fe that were really focused on some really great collaboration with their transportation department and finding great opportunities there to get more green infrastructure installed. So next, I just wanted to show, this is sort of our integrated planning wheel. So those are the 6 elements of integrated planning, and those are the 10 worksheets sort of matched up with which elements they support. And then the last few things I wanted to highlight, our sister division, the Water Infrastructure Division, oversees the Clean Water SRF funding program, several other grant programs and technical assistance. And they also have this water financing clearinghouse, which I'm realizing it's not on there. I meant to add a link to they recently did a webinar in September 2023, which it's a learning module on financing stormwater infrastructure. So that's within the clearinghouse there, and maybe I'll add that link and send it back to you. But they, it's kind of a hub of resources on funding and financing and, information on setting up stormwater utilities, different case studies of what's worked for different communities. It's a helpful resource and pretty easy to navigate. I think Seth talked about both of these funding programs. they both can fund stormwater infrastructure. This Clean Water SRF program obviously has a much bigger amount of money involved. And then the sewer overflow and stormwater reuse municipal grant program is a much smaller pot of money, though it is very focused on trying to fund stormwater projects. So I think it should stay on your radar. It's also a grant program, which I've heard has more appeal than the revolving loan program. So, both of those programs can fund a variety of stormwater infrastructure, like typical sort of construction cost type things, but it can also be used for developing a long-term stormwater plan or an integrated plan. It can be used for asset management planning. You can put in a request to use the funds to buy equipment for maintenance, so like a street sweeper would be eligible. And I think some of those planning things are especially helpful for stormwater folks who see a barrier to entry to getting these loans because they don't necessarily have the documents together to request them. And so it's, as long as you're doing the planning work on a path to pursue one of the funding programs, you can use that grant money for the actual planning work. And another resource which is currently available that can also be used to do a lot of this planning work is the Water TA. Oh, here's the recorded webinar I wanted to highlight. Yes, addressing stormwater challenges with EPA's technical assistance. So Water TA, rolled out as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's a good amount of funding to help with various types of technical assistance. That can be assistance with submitting a loan application or developing some of the materials that are needed to pursue the funding. They have a big engineering support contracts. So if you need to do some preliminary design work or develop a long-term plan, also developing an asset management plan could be used. You could use the Water TA for that. And they've been trying to do a lot more outreach to try to, at the behest of stakeholders like you and some of the environmental NGOs, that they weren't seeing a lot of stormwater projects in the pipeline under the Water TA. So they're really trying to beat the drum and get out there and talk more. And they've been joining a lot more webinars and trying to get the word out to get more projects on the stormwater side in. So it's a great opportunity. It's not going to be there forever, but because it can be used to sort of get started with the loan process, it can be used for all those preliminary documents I mentioned. I think it is a great opportunity and worth pursuing. And they tell me it's easy to apply. You click on the link or you send an email to that, and it's a pretty short form to fill out, and then you're supposed to get a call with the engineering contractor to figure out what your specific needs are. So that wraps up the things I was going to highlight. I hope I touched on everything you had asked for. But yeah, we're happy to do some discussion.
Anybody have any questions?
And if you can repeat the question, because Mike.
When Scott gave his presentation, he talked about climate resilience, and one of your early slides talked about stormwater needs survey, and I noticed that gray and green infrastructure are separate bullets. Do you have a feel for whether states are starting to look at planning those systems to deal with climate resilience, and the planning documents that come from the
So
We can repeat the question.
yeah, so the question was first about the Clean Watershed Needs Survey, and pointing out that we highlighted that they kind of tallied up both the green and the gray infrastructure needs separately, and whether that should be maybe bifurcated that way, or folks are looking at kind of merging those two moving forward. And then does the long-term stormwater planning stuff speak to resilience? So I think yes and yes. With the Clean Watershed Needs Survey, they have been breaking out information to answer various questions like how much green infrastructure is getting funded, because we ask them that all the time. So I don't think that they're limiting whether it can go to green or gray, but they are counting it, tracking it separately. And I know that I think it's most states, there's the Green Project Reserve or a similar type program where there's a certain amount of money they're trying to put towards green projects, which can be green infrastructure. It can also be, I think, more like green energy kind of stuff, but a lot of that goes to green infrastructure as well. And then for the long-term stormwater planning, yes, resilience is definitely front of mind of communities as they're doing this planning work. And our resources talk about that. And we try to make sure that we're highlighting in all of our materials sort of the importance of using the latest data and forward-looking projections where available, especially when planning 20 years down the road, because it's so important to be sizing your infrastructure for something that you think is likely to be the case when that project's actually getting built and for the life of that asset. Do you want to add anything on that?
The increase of 365% is definitely outpacing inflation. What do you think is driving that? Is it something in the way that you have outreach and people you included and extrapolated control? Is it resilience and recognition of climate change and recent larger flooding, or is it being driven by TDL or quality, or all all of the above? But do you have a feeling for what you think is driving?
So you have to repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question is, what do you think is driving the huge increase in the clean watershed needs, that jump of 385% from 2012 to 2022 data on stormwater needs? And I think there's a few things at play. One, I think there was a lot better data collection reporting this time around, so that's like baseline. But yeah, I think, heavier precipitation, increased like concern about stormwater impacts, I think communities are generally more focused on wanting to spend money on that type of infrastructure, I think, these days. What else would you guys add?
Yeah, what I'd add to Lisa too is what you mentioned when we had let me take a step back. The team that does clean water SRF, the 630 billion, they think is still a little bit underreported as well, just because of the needs that are out there. When we saw the 2012 data, we all kind of knew that was vastly underreported just because there wasn't, it was new to kind of start bringing stormwater into that. So the team that does the data collection, they were really proud, like they got stormwater needs from every state but Hawaii. They actually, for all the survey needs, they got all the territories, all the states. So to Lisa's point, the jump in the increase, we think is better reflective of just the fact that they were able to get out and get a lot more of those projects. I would say that based on things like resiliency and things like that, we'll probably see an increase in needs. I don't think it's so much compliance related. I just think it's people looking at the projects they need to put in the ground and having a better grasp with that this time around.
Do you anticipate that this will continue? It takes time to get these things in the pipeline. As far as awareness, the next time it's going to be more. I assume that's the case. What do you think?
Yeah, and to your point, you're right. I think there was an intent back in '72 that we would do this on a biannual basis. Right. And unlike the drinking water needs survey, which is tied to how they distribute the money, clean water is not done that way. So there has been this kind of gap in reporting. So, like you said, the last one was 2016, which was 2012 data. So we've got this year's, which is 2022, which was a little bit quicker turnaround for us. But it is important, especially, when you look at bill funding, bill lasts 5 years. We've got 2 more years of bill funding for FY25 and 26. But, clean water is $55 billion. Everybody can kind of look at what the needs are for the clean water sector and kind of see what the delta in the needs are there. And it just is something that we all collectively as an industry need to take a look at and kind of think comprehensively about, like, where are we going to go and kind of figure this out and what are the methods of getting there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Chris, just so everybody understands, the reason there was this 10-year gap is because it wasn't funded by Congress, correct? I mean, it's not because you guys were saying, we don't care.
We very much agree with we didn't do the we don't care. Yeah, we do need to get congressional appropriations to do it because it is a multi-year process to go out and get it. So because we don't have the SRF link on the drivers for funding, there is a little bit sometimes of a lag in what we get. But we are happy to do whatever Congress instructs us to do. So as we get that, we will turn those reports around as quickly as we can.
And we
supported that increase in funding to make this happen, along with many other organizations.
Yeah.
That's my point. I mean, I think everybody here needs to be pushing for that so that EPA can do this, because we are in a data-driven step in our evolution of this program. And if we don't have the data, it's much harder to do what we need to do. So,
Right.
yeah, we need to keep pushing, get this survey done.
And again, we're just trying to make the case that there is a need to have a national organization trying to help work with others to drive this kind of data. That's going to help us make the case that we have significant needs. But we all need to work together on that. Are there any other questions or thoughts that folks have?
Well, and I don't want to compliment NMSA too much, but
Please don't.
to Lisa's point, like part of the reason I think there was better stormwater information this year around was not so much, you know, we did a lot more outreach as an organization, but there were also groups on the outside that were reaching out and saying, you need to let EPA know about this. So it was that complementary effort of things that were
Yeah,
going
we
on.
hope to do more of that in the
Yeah.
future. Exactly.
Right.
Becca, you've
Yeah, shifting gears to trash a little bit here. You know, it's ubiquitous. It's pretty much everywhere you look. It definitely comes from urban stormwater. It's not widely regulated. Some of the reasons for that, I'm curious your feedback on, but one is that there aren't really trash standards that are associated with beneficial uses. So going through the TMDL process works a lot differently than other conventional pollutants that we're used to thinking about and used to regulate. And I also don't think that EPA really has even a definition for trash. So it seems like both of those things would be super helpful to actually have a definition. Ideally, something that looks like California, you know, anthropogenic materials, even larger, you know, that are persistent in the environment, something along those lines. And then linking that back to receiving waters and the vulnerabilities that they have. It just seems like every time we talk about PFAS or, you know, 60 and then I look at water bodies and there's trash floating, and I think, if we can't control trash, how are we going to go?
That's a big leap. That's right.
So maybe you could just speak to how you're thinking about trash and what kind of regulatory levers you may be able to pull to try to make it more widely regulated.
Could you repeat there's some
Do
question?
you want me to?
Sure.
All right.
Summarize.
Yeah. So the question I think boiled down to a couple of things, like trash is ubiquitous and a problem. We don't have standards for trash, or we don't see too many TMDLs for trash. What are we thinking collectively about as an organization? And then do we have any plans for doing better with it? So a couple of thoughts. I will echo your thought. I think one of the interesting challenges about stormwater is you have the whole spectrum of things that you have to deal with, from what is essentially a litter control problem all the way to pollutants of emerging concern is what we're calling them, right? So like to Scott's point, PFAS has been around for 70 years. It didn't just pop up. It's just that we're finally getting the tools to regulate. So we've got this whole cornucopia of issues that we have to deal with, from the very rudimentary down to the very hard technically, where you've got thousands of PFAS out there, and what do we do? So for trash, it is something that has been a little bit of a challenge for us, because it's not specifically listed as a pollutant, and it kind of falls in this another space of like, what do we do with it? So it does come down to a little bit of source control, where we have had permits in some places actually that have tried to do better trash controls. They've been challenged, and we haven't always won on those. So we are thinking about, especially because of things like microplastics, and we're working, you know, with our sister office in OWAL that has, you know, the microplastics portfolio, and then there's legislation about Save Our Seas. We're trying to think about how we can kind of get upstream to this, just like we're going to try to do with PFAS. But it is something that is front and center on our mind, because it is kind of demoralizing when you think about the challenges that we face, and then you just go and you see waterways inundated with it. So we're trying to think of, you know, is it our program through the MPDS program? Is it an OLM-based program, you know, waste management type program? Where do we kind of fit in here and make use of partnerships to get better control of that? But it is something that we think about and understand that it's very much front and center for a lot of communities.
Yeah, and the Office of Wetlands, Oceans, and Watersheds that Chris mentioned has had a few efforts on plastics, so not just microplastics, but plastic in general. And also something on tire particles, which wasn't just about 6-PBD, but was about like broader impacts there. So they do have some stuff up on their website, and I can pass that link along. And they had a roundtable, and there's been some legislation too, the Save Our Seas, I think it's called, which has like been the impetus for some of their efforts. So it seems like there's resources and stuff going on there, but I know that doesn't speak to the regulatory side as much.
And can I shamelessly go off script on the trash to just compliment something that you said on PFAS? Seth did mention the CERCLA designation for PFOA and PFOS. So they are hazardous materials under CERCLA. So Seth pointed out CERCLA is a very expansive law. It was designed that way to hold there to be many responsible parties that were liable for cleanups. So where the passive receivers get concerned, and not just stormwater but wastewater, is they could have been a transporter of the pollutant that is now designated. So obviously, if you carried it through your MS4 pipes, you could be a transporter. In previous Superfund litigation, Seth mentioned private parties have sued either wastewater treatment plants as part of some of that transport, that to bring them into the liability scheme that of those folks that are responsible to pay. So we've talked to wastewater utilities that have been on the hook for Superfund cleanups, that all they did was receive it and discharge it as part of their normal operation. So we did, to Seth's point, we can't provide an absolute shield for this, just the way it works, but the enforcement office did put out an enforcement discretion memo in April that did say that we would not be pursuing liability for passive receivers. That's drinking water systems, wastewater systems, stormwater systems, farms that have land applied biosolids, and firefighting, municipal firefighting agencies and airports. And not only would we not be seeking liability from them, but when we settle with third parties that are the manufacturers of this, as part of that settlement, we would seek to limit their ability to go after other third parties to try to bring them into their responsibility with that. That doesn't provide a complete umbrella, but you can see, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at that enforcement discretion memo. The agency's posture is very strong about we want to get upstream to the people that have manufactured, benefited from it, not the folks that have kind of received along the way. I can't speak to the legislative push. I understand the reason for that because there's only so much that we can do within our discretion authorities, but I did just want to make clear and compliment the points that Seth made on that.
I think it's an important point because, you know, we could be on the hook, and there is a history of this. And there is that guidance that's out there that clarifies the intent or the priority.
That's right.
So I guess I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the nuance that's out there, that you may not desire to do that, but you're limited in what you can do.
Could you repeat where that document can be found and when this was released?
Yeah, we can send the link. It was April 19th. It came out, I forget, if you Google like EPA PFAS enforcement discretion, it will pop up. But we can also send the link to Seth and have them distribute it.
And we'll make sure to send some things out if we need to, or as things come up here. Dave, do you have a question?
Chris, you brought up enforcement, so I'm going to bring up enforcement. Municipal stormwater has sort of varied whether it's a priority for the national enforcement program. I'd be interested in hearing your idea. And I'm actually hearing anecdotal information, a significant increase in the number of enforcement cases, compliance cases being brought on municipal stormwater permit compliance. Do you have any thoughts about whether we're going to see increased focus as an enforcement priority around MS4s? And I'm particularly interested, I know it's premature to conclude anything, but if the Supreme Court decides in the city of San Francisco, some people are thinking it's going to create a move for creating narrow limits and stormwater permits where they don't exist now. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about, are we going to see more enforcement and maybe different character of MS4 permits kind of in response to these efforts?
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that's good. No, it's good that you remind me because I wouldn't do it and I just started talking. So the question was about, do we have any thoughts on whether MS4s would be an enforcement priority going forward in the future? And then do we anticipate different type of MS4 permit limits because of the San Francisco case before the Supreme Court? So I can't really speak to enforcement just because that's not our shop. As far as what their enforcement initiatives are right now, I'm not aware that MS4 is an area. I know that there have been some enforcement cases, but those have been specific instances. So they normally will put out like a 5-year plan of what their enforcement and compliance priorities are. And I do not believe that MS4s are on that list currently. And then with regard to San Francisco, I think one of the best ways for me to kind of answer that question is I would encourage everybody, as Lisa said, go take a look at our brief, because I think that will be a really good understanding of why the way we develop permits. I think there's a good thesis behind that. As far as its impact on MS4s, because MS4s have the MEP standard and the other measures as the administrator determines as necessary to meet water quality standards, it's a little bit different than every other NPDES permit that has the statutory requirement to meet water quality standards. So depending on how that plays out, we will have an opinion sometime in spring or fall. I'm sorry, the spring or summer. I don't know exactly what, we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see, how that opinion plays out. And then whether that's exactly the same for the MS4 world, because of, if there are any changes, we'll just kind of have to see, just because MS4s hold a unique place in the whole regulatory scheme and the way the permit limits are developed.
Any other questions? I've got one. So I know Chevron doctrine is, that like the third rail,
No, that's okay.
understand.
Yeah.
Does the agency have any kind of official stance on that, or is it something that's being worked on, or is that something that's, I know there's only so much you can react to, but are there anything like that we either could share now or share in the future that you think?
So Seth's asking about our operational plan for moving forward after Chevron, I think was the question. Yeah. Yeah. So
what he said.
Yeah. So we got the opinion about 2 months ago. I think anytime we get an opinion that resets 40 years of precedent, we take a step back and think about how we're going to kind of move forward. What I would say kind of, from our part in the program, Chevron really determines the way courts look at our rules or programs when they're challenged, right? So what Chevron, the Chevron doctrine, which is no longer in effect, basically said there was a 2-part test that the court should use when we did a rulemaking. One was the statute abundantly clear, and if it was, then the statute, Clean Water Act governed. If there was ambiguity in the statute, then it said that there was a deference to the expert opinion of the agency that the court should take into account. The Supreme Court said that deference is no longer there, and that while you could consider the agency's opinion or how they implemented it, it should bear no more weight than any other information before the court. So it really lands more in the judicial lane than in our lane of what we do. We are, I will just tell you the way we approach our work, we are very diligent, and we really have a faithfulness to the intent of the law and our regulatory structure. So anything we do is really grounded in science and the law. So, if things get appealed, we will, we're pretty confident most times that they'll stand, just because we will ground it in the science and the legal authorities that we have.
Okay.
Just to kind of follow up on that, I heard both of Seth's introduction and your now talk about the judicial branch really being placed for a lot of stuff in this order. It seems to me that that's a little missing the legislative branch, which ideally would be making more clear, unambiguous rules in the first place. I know that there was a stormwater rulemaking effort, years ago that went the ways, but then fall short really of really having a new rule that was more, up to date, unambiguous. How do you think about that? Like, is there a role that you see for the legislative branch to clean up some of the issues that we have that are now essentially addressed in guidance?
Can you repeat?
Yeah. So the question was more related to, is there a role, like, especially considering Chevron, is there more of a role for, Congress essentially to step up and provide the clarity that might, otherwise not be there? The answer for us is we don't have an opinion on Congress's actions. Chevron basically comes down to who interprets the statute before it. Is it, before it was that the agency had a little bit of ability, if there wasn't precise language to do that. What Supreme Court said, that is entirely a judicial review process for them. So any rulemaking that we do, they will look at the existing statute and determine, whether our effort complied with that or not in their reading. But I would say, just as a general matter, if Congress feels that there's a deficiency that they want one of the agencies to address, they always have the purview to amend or add statute to work that. But, we basically work at the express direction of, the statute itself. That's before us.
Okay, well, I'm gonna give you guys the break.
All right.
Thank you for your input. And we're gonna wrap up here. I did want to mention, well, first of all, thanks to Lisa and to Chris for, you guys hustled right from the airport to get here, didn't you? Yeah, it was convenient. It's true. I've never seen didn't look right on my map that it was so close, but thank you for making it a priority. Jamie Pizziali, also from EPA, you're going to be here as the municipal ombudsman. You're going to be around and available for anyone. Do you want to, is there anything I can say on your behalf, or you can say? I do have the microphone. Okay, EPA has a booth, so you're the person that okay, well, it's not a huge space. The point is that if folks want to talk to and engage with that's your role. That's your job, is to listen to permittees, correct? Is that, or municipalities, or everybody? Anyone, okay. Yes. Yep. Excellent. So I want folks to know that EPA is trying to work to hear what's going on, where the challenges are. Also, there'll be a session, the town hall session with the EPA town hall session tomorrow from 2 to 2:45, I believe is the time, in Crystal Ballroom 3-4. We'll do more of what we just went through with more people in the room. So if you have any other questions or thoughts for EPA, think about them now from between now and then we can line them all up and they'll do some more dancing for us. So appreciate that. But honestly, EPA has been a really strong partner for us, and we really appreciate their time. And I hope folks know that, state organizations work with their state regulatory agencies closely. We are partnering and working with our federal regulators here and trying to make some significant changes and provide input from the sector to them. And I guarantee you that I can speak for EPA that they do want to hear about what the challenges are and what's working, what's not working, and whatnot, more than you might think, because EPA is often, told to be the bad guy, but you guys aren't the compliance and enforcement folks. Like Dave said, you're the good guys, right? You're the better guys, and all the resources that they provide. I just wanted to clarify that. We're all good. Yeah, everyone's good. For those folks, we have a QR code right there. If you're interested in joining NMSA, please check that out. That'll take you to a page where you can provide your information. We need more and more folks to join. When I say folks, I should specify, especially communities and MS4s. So that's not going to make you become a member, but you can provide information, and we will follow up with some specifics on that. Or if you really do want to join, you can see the link right there. If you go to our website and go to our memberships, you can join that way. So is there anything else any last words, Scott? Okay, with that being said, we're going to wrap things up. Thanks for everyone's time and attendance. And again, thanks for EPA for making time for us.